It's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce to you Mr. Jeffrey Stratton, who has in addition to credentials that are really edifying, he has another big credential in that, in addition to being the head of one of the most famous companies throughout the world, McDonald's, he's also got a wonderful reputation as being a real human being. And I think you'll see that. It's part of the reason for McDonald's continued success. Never lost connection with his customers and with what the business was all about. In America, we love the idea of working your way up from the bottom level to the top. I mean, it goes all the way back to Horatio Alger. And Mr. Stratton, Jeffrey Stratton, has experience sort of like that. I mean, he started right at the ground level. He's a crew member of McDonald's and worked his way all the way up by his talent, his charisma, his vision to be the head of the company. And we're honored and pleased to share the podium today and offer this podium to Mr. Jeffrey Stratton.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Weather's breaking in Chicago, so that's a good thing, right? Yeah, a little easier to get around. First, I want to start off by saying thank you for inviting me to speak with you this morning. And Father Blazek, I quickly found out once I was contacted that you don't say no to Father Blazek. So, but I'm truly honored to have an opportunity just to say hello to you today and tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about McDonald's, and a little bit about, I guess my approach, my professional approach and my faith and my values and what that's meant to me in my work career. And so I hope we can get into that. Be more than happy at the end to answer any questions you may have. Through my work, I've had the occasion to speak to many people in many groups, not only around the country, but around the world. Prior to retiring, the last 10 years that I spent with the company, 8 of those I spent internationally. So I was traveling the world, working on the international operations side of the business. But I have to admit, when Father approached me to come and talk with you today, I hesitated, and I actually thought about saying no. And the reason for that is, sometimes it becomes kind of controversial. When you've got a corporate leader speaking on a college campus on different issues. And I want you to know that I'm glad I accepted the invitation because I don't really speak for McDonald's anymore. I speak for myself on the experiences that I had with McDonald's, and I'm more than happy to share those with you today. I asked myself also, why would anyone want to hear my story? But I know a lot of you are just starting or getting ready to embark on your careers, or maybe just getting started in business. And I hope that through some of what I share with you today, that I can be helpful and maybe inspire a little bit and help you along. And if I can do that, I think we'll have accomplished what we wanted to do. As Dave said, I'm the former president of McDonald's USA. I retired this past October after 41 years at the company. Now, I know I only look 29, but I truly did start when I was a junior in high school. And I never left. And it's kind of a weird story, I know that, all right? But I really got into the environment there and got into the people and got into the company in a way that I think probably happens to very few people. And we'll talk about that today. As the president of McDonald's USA in Canada the last 2 years, I had responsibility for 15,500 restaurants in both those countries. 14,000 of those in the United States and about 1,500 in Canada. What's unusual about my career is that I was able to stick with and succeed at one company for over 40 years. And as you very well know, watching the business environment today, in most cases, young people today, including my own kids, are projected to work for almost 10 different companies in their work life. All right? People are really moving around today like they never did before. I started as a crew person behind the counter in 1973 in Detroit, Michigan. And to say that I came from the wrong side of the tracks would be an understatement. All right? I was a high school kid without a job during the summer, and a dad that says, if you think you're sitting around this house and doing nothing all summer, you're wrong. Go get a job. I had a brother that worked at the new McDonald's down the street. And I went down there and I lied and said I was 16 years old. I wasn't. I was 15, and I got a job. And I have been there ever since until last October. And unlike my wife, who I'm going to talk to you about a little bit today, I met my wife at McDonald's. Okay, she worked for me as a crew person. Now that's not allowed today, okay, but I didn't really tell anybody at the time, but she did work for me as a crew person. Today, if you probably looked up the word in the dictionary persistence, you'd probably see her face. We got married young. She was 18, I was 20. I was a new minted restaurant manager in the Detroit market. I never finished college. I finished 1 year. I regret that today, but I was lucky. We could only afford for one person to go to school, and it was going to be her. And she was a great student. She got her bachelor's in nursing at 28 from Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan. She got her master's in nursing from Rush University in Chicago at 38 here in Chicago. She got her doctorate in nursing at 48 at the University of Colorado when we were living in Denver. She never gave up, raised our kids, did everything. I was traveling the world, okay? That's persistence, all right? Today, I'm happy to tell you she's the VP of nursing and runs Comer Children's Hospital at University of Chicago. She runs all of children's and women's services over there. And she's probably been the strongest support that I've had in attaining a 41-year career at McDonald's. When I started at McDonald's, I made $1.60 an hour, $1.60. And I thought I was in Fat City, right? I had everything I needed, as a selfish young teenager, all right, working at McDonald's. But there's a reason that I stayed at the company for as long as I did. And reflecting back after all those years today, it's because I really do believe in the values of the company. And I know that's controversial to a lot of people, but I really do believe it. McDonald's, some fun facts. You all know this. It's the largest restaurant chain by volume in the world, which means a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about our brand. Some good, some not so good. And there may be some things you've never realized about McDonald's that I just want to share with you very quickly today. The truth is that in every dialogue, there's a point and a counterpoint in business. And I want to provide you with a few of the fun facts, as I call them, about the company. In the US, McDonald's still serves over 28 million people every single day. Every single day. That's the equivalent of serving the entire American population every 12 days. Interesting. Our owner-operators collectively employ, around the world, 1.8 million people and pushing 2 million people around the globe today. So when you think about the largest employers around the globe, you have to think about Walmart, right? You have to think about Sam's Club. You have to think about McDonald's and others. We're often known as being the first job and for providing the training and tools to help our managers and our crew people succeed at McDonald's and beyond. And, you know, I always like to point out a few of some of the famous people that started at McDonald's. Jay Leno started at McDonald's. Jeff Bezos, the CEO and the chairman of Amazon, started at McDonald's. Rachel McAdams, actress at McDonald's. And I'm not alone when I say I started this crew. Most of our restaurant and managers do the same. Believe it or not, half of our U.S. franchisees, we have 3,200 franchisees that own and operate about 90% of the restaurants in the United States. Over half of them started as crew people, and they've done very, very well. 60% of our vice presidents that run our 22 regions around the country started as crew people. So we're proud to provide those crew people an opportunity. I've always called our company a company of opportunity. Our restaurant managers, and I was one of them, run a multi-million-dollar business every single year. I was a manager at 20 years old. Not too many people get that kind of opportunity, I think, today, and it's a tough job. It's not an easy job. They lead the growth and development of approximately 50 people and anywhere from 10 to 15 restaurant managers per unit. So there's a lot of people in there. And not only do we help by creating jobs in the community, but we also return 46 cents of every dollar that we bring in to that local community. And sometimes this is through what we call the shopping cart, all right? The cost of goods and what we do in the community and taxes and payroll, et cetera. In the US alone, a bit of a staggering figure, $10 to $12 billion worth of food and paper every year to support those 14,000 restaurants. That's a lot of buying power, and our suppliers do a great job with that. We're also proud that we have over 300 Ronald McDonald houses, and many of you know where those are, right here in Chicago. And I believe our number is up to 6 in Chicago, with the newest one being right over by Lurie Children's Hospital. And we're in 33 countries around the globe with those 300 Ronald McDonald houses. And every single night around the globe, approximately 10,000 families take advantage of those Ronald McDonald houses. You know what we charge them? $10. And if they can't pay, it's free. We don't turn them away, okay? And they can be close to their kids. Now, these facts give you a good flavor of McDonald's, but they don't tell the whole story. As a global system, we continue to seek opportunity to use our size, scope, and our influence to make greater impact. And in 3 areas specifically, we're making great headway. Are we where we need to be yet? Probably not. Do we have more work to do? Probably yes. Environmental stewardship is one. Animal welfare and sustainable sourcing. When we make a move in that area, we change the entire industry, and we change the scope of the conversation throughout the country because of the size and scope. Menu evolution, and many of you have read a lot about that in recent days. Some of the decisions that are being made to make the menu better, all right? There's constant change going on inside the company. Do I know all of it today after being gone for 6 months? No, but I know what I read and I know who I talk with, and I think they're all very good changes. McDonald's has also partnered in a very, very significant way with the Clinton Foundation and the Alliance for Healthier Generation, okay, to help with children's well-being. And as you know, if you follow the menu, have made significant changes over the course of the last 5 to 7 years in that particular area of the menu. We also have an open door policy at McDonald's, and it's called Open Door Opportunity. Opportunity for all of our people to grow, an opportunity for our employees to reach out beyond working in the McDonald's environment to help their communities. And we also work very, very hard on the training of our employees. And I would point to, we have 7 hamburger universities around the globe. That's what they're called, all right? Many of you may have seen the one that's out in Oak Brook. That was the, the original one here. But all those 7 hamburger universities now are accredited with college credit, all right? Every one of them. We work very, very hard. So the business courses that we're teaching our people there, they are getting college credit for, and we're very, very proud of that. We've also instituted English Under the Arches. You know, there's communication issues everywhere in the world today, okay, because of the changing demographics and dynamics out there today. We've trained almost 6,000 people, okay, in the English language and have helped them in their business environment here in the U.S. And last but not least, I would point to the work that's going on inside the company with veterans, okay? And in the last 18 months, the company has hired approximately 80,000 veterans, okay, into our system. And it's a big system, and whether that's in supply, whether that's in operations, whether that's in legal, all right, almost 80,000 veterans have been hired into the company. So why do I mention it? I mention it because I'm proud of McDonald's, and I'm not afraid to say it. And while this work is what I've done most of my life, it's not all of who I am. I believe the success that I've had in my career really started with my parents and at my Catholic school, with the teachers that I had and the early on teaching I had about faith. And I wanted to talk with you about that today. I want to share with you 3 lessons. I've shared them with a number of groups. I'm a member at Old St. Pat's here in Chicago, and you know, I've talked to a lot of our groups in our community about these 3 lessons, and I think they play in business, and I want to try to tie those in for you. But you know, they've influenced my work, and ultimately I think some of the success that I've had, probably not all of it, all right? First one, this one has served me very, very well later in my career, especially as you move up the ranks in a company, and it's called forgiveness. It's called forgiveness. It hasn't always been a smooth pass, all right, for me in McDonald's. It really hasn't, you know, and like anybody else's career, you know, there's roadblocks that come into place. And sometimes those roadblocks are caused by people who actually want to put that roadblock in front of you. I've disagreed with a lot of people. I don't think you become the president of a company by being a yes person, right? You've got to be someone that challenges. And you've got to be somebody that will ask the hard question. I've had a lot of people disagree with me. You know, probably a lot in the audience today that I don't even know that disagree with me. That's fine, okay? I've been passed over for promotions, all right? Just like maybe some of you have. And frankly, there were several times where I nearly walked away and left the company. The only reason that I was able to stay is I was able to forgive. I took a positive approach. If you can't release bitterness, in my opinion, you're not going to succeed in business because you're going to walk around with a chip on your shoulder. And I think you have to be very careful. So that was the first one. The second lesson, and I really learned this from my faith life. I come from a family of 6. I can't say that all 6 of those kids go to church every Sunday. For some reason, I've always done it. All right? I've always believed in that. And I learned this one really from my faith and actually beginning to listen when I'm sitting there in the pew. And that's practicing compassion. Practicing compassion. It may sound like it goes against the competitive nature in the business world, but on a person-to-person basis, it's the only way to really get things done. The only way to get things done. It looks like a couple of things to me, and I'll share them with you. Number 1 is the golden rule. Do unto others. Give others the benefit of the doubt. Look for the good in people. Most people are good, and they're trying to do things right every single day. Last but not least, admit when you're wrong and have compassion for yourself when you have to eat your own words. and I'm sure many of us have had to do that. I know I have. When you allow people to share what's on their mind and in their hearts, sometimes that's all they need. And when you're open and you really, truly have an open door, you sometimes get great counsel from those people. But you've got to exercise compassion. You get more than just what people think you want to hear. You know, there's always going to be the yes people. When you get into a position that I was fortunate enough to have, you have to be able to sort through that, right, very, very quickly. Because everybody wants to do everything you want them to do, all right? And sometimes you really need people like I brought with me today, Miriam, who was my chief of staff at McDonald's, to say, that's not going to go well if we go that way, okay? And here's why. And you have to be able to listen to that. One of the greatest weaknesses that I've always, just admitted to people is listening. It's one of the greatest weaknesses because I'm a complete type A. Complete type A. I mean, I want to hear it. I want to make a decision. I want to move on, and I want to get traction to move the business. That's our job. All right? That's what I wanted. I learned to be a better listener throughout my career. And when you really concentrate on the message people are sending you, it makes them feel valued. So please don't forget that. It promotes a real exchange. It allows you to behave with compassion because you've listened for greater understanding. So we don't need to get sappy about that. I'm just telling you, if you're a good listener, all right, you got half the battle won. I didn't have half the battle won, okay? I had to develop that. And there's some people that had to get right in my face to help me get there. You're never going to know what's truly going on with people around you, and they won't tell you the truth, okay, if you don't listen. You know, people, they tease a little bit. That's why God gave us 2 ears and only one mouth, okay? Use the 2 ears first. Third, gratitude. You have to practice gratitude. And believe me, it's a practice. Because when you're around as many people as many of us are, it might be in your family, it might be where you work, it might be in the classroom, right? It might be out on the street. It's very, very easy to forget to be grateful to people who do something good for you. As you can imagine, I've had a lot of long days. You don't get to look like this without a lot of long days, guys, okay? It's hard sometimes to look around and say, God, thank you for this 18-hour day. Thank you for that bumpy plane ride. Thank you for those angry owner-operators. And thank you once again for this hard-as-hell hotel bed. But I had all of those, right? It happens. But my path has allowed me to raise my family in a relative good deal of security and material comfort. And I admit that. It's been great for me. I don't take it for granted, though. And I use my gifts to give back to the work of the church. And I'm really into that right now with Old St. Pat's and with the Archdiocese of Chicago. I also try to practice gratitude with others, particularly my colleagues. And I still call them my colleagues because we talk a lot. It's amazing what stopping to look someone in the eye and saying a genuine thank you will do. And how it makes you feel, and I know how it makes me feel. People give an amazing amount of their discretionary effort to you and to me and to our companies. Everyone wakes up each day and tries their very best to contribute. It's the environment around them that shapes their day, whether good or bad. There's a lot of people we know, they stay late, they serve on community and nonprofit boards, or they're leaders in their faith community and serve on different boards throughout the city. And they deserve gratitude, all right? They deserve a thank you. I always try to remember to say thank you. I wasn't very good at that when I was young. In fact, I was probably pretty selfish about it. I believed the security guy that I passed every single morning was just as important as the executive VP that was sitting next to my office. I knew his name, I knew his family, I said hello, and I did my very best to make sure that he felt he was part of the team. Because he was a hell of a nice guy. Not because you have to, but because you have to do that as a leader in these businesses. I'm grateful for all the good that's been given to me and the opportunities that I've been afforded. And as part of that gratitude, I'm giving back to the people around me. And whether that's my family or the community, it's very, very important, at least at my stage in life. It may be different for you, and that's fine. If I leave you with one thing today, it's this. We all have choices in this world. I believe it's up to us to decide whether our influence is going to be positive or it's going to be negative. Because there's a lot of negative out there, but there's also a lot of positive when you really go after it. You know, one of the things that people used to say to me before I go up and speak or before I go to a meeting, you bring the weather. You bring the weather, right? And you bring it everywhere you go. When we choose to act in accordance with our faith, we choose to be responsible and I think live a life of integrity. So when you say we know there's a lot of people that maybe don't agree with us or that type of thing, the one thing you always have to do is know that you have to keep your integrity intact and tell the truth. Acting with forgiveness, compassion, and gratitude has made a huge difference in my life, both personally and professionally. And I'm the most imperfect person you could ever see in your life, okay? And I've made a lot of mistakes, all right? But I ask for forgiveness, okay, from a lot of people. I'm lucky to have been associated with a great brand like McDonald's, but I believe living by my faith is truly how I've been able to succeed. I never gave up on that. I don't know, there was something always there that said to me, that's a good way to go, all right? That's a good way to go. As many of you start your careers, I'd encourage you to think about some of the filters that I would call that you need to apply to the companies that you're considering going to work with or you work with today. Is the company a proponent of treating people fairly and equally? Is it the type of environment that shares your values? Are the company's ethics and morals closely tied to your own? Is it a place where you can feel comfortable and you know you can succeed? I've seen it time and time again. Greed, selfishness, not treating people fairly. These behaviors do not make for good business, nor do they lead to good results. So with that, I thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. And maybe we can open it up for any questions. Thanks, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Is this, okay, good, it's working. What we're going to do is we're going to open it up for questions and have, we're not going to let the questions go out until the guy has the, or the girl has the microphone. So that way everybody will, this will be able to be recorded. One thing I want to add, Jeff, you're my kind of guy. I had a big argument when I was in college working at the Jewel food store. And it was during the 60s when everything was up for grabs. And I had the brilliant idea at that time that I didn't think a person, no offense to the professors out there, a person should be a professor unless he had worked at least a year with his hands, so he knew where he was coming from. I think, as Pope Francis said, a shepherd should have the smell of the sheep. And we should be close enough to what we're doing that we understand the people that are working with it. And I think when you do that, you get the qualities that Jeff has been talking about. So with that, let's open it up for questions. Who's got some questions? Yes, ma'am, down there.
That was so great. Thank you. And I just have a question about, as far as the last comment that you're making about kind of choosing a company. What are some best practices for how do we figure out which company has maybe more, is more based on integrity?
Yeah.
And then also the second question being, is this like, how important is this to do opposed to being the one to impact the company? Like if we are going towards a company that doesn't seem to have this as a center base, how much can one person make a difference in that community, or do you really want to be steadfast and looking for something that this is already moving as far as because this is your work environment?
You know, a lot of the young people that I've worked with over the last maybe, I don't know, I've been back in Chicago since 2002, and we've had a great internship program at the company. And when I first went to Oak Brook the first time, it was like 1987. Okay, half of you probably weren't even born, but. I think the number of interns that we had coming into the company at that time might have been 5. I think last year we had about 250, okay, people from all walks of life, okay? Somewhere in architecture, somewhere in innovation, somewhere in legal, somewhere in operations, you name it, somewhere in communications, marketing, all of that. I think they learn a very valuable lesson. Internships, I think, are very valuable. The other thing is, I think you'll hear a lot about these companies from people that mentor you, all right? I don't think many people that are really good mentors steer young people in the wrong direction. They try to steer them towards companies that they think would fit their values, all right? And, fit their kind of like personality where they know that they can contribute. All right, and so that's really very, very important. The days, as Dave just said, of, hey, you're not going to succeed in McDonald's unless you work in operations. Unless you work in the restaurant first, then you can go in and be a marketing person. Those days are over in our company, and they've been over for quite some time. There's a tremendous amount of talent that we've actually hired from those internships, hired from people that we know in the community. Their children are finishing college, or they're in their junior year, and they're in marketing, and is it possible that they could get into work in the marketing arena with McDonald's? And we've been really successful with that over the last couple of years. I had a young lady, I'll give you an example that I just came upon, and I came upon her at Old St. Pat's. And what happened is, I'm chairing the capital campaign for the church at the request of Father Hurley. And like Father Blazek, you don't say no to Father Hurley over at Old St. Pat's. So we go in there. The first Sunday we kick this thing off, one of the things that we're doing is we're going to build homes for homeless teens in North Lawndale. All right? There's over 400 kids every single night that don't have a home in that community. And we're going to impact that, okay? And we've raised a lot of money to do that. But we're working with John Horan at North Lawndale Community Prep. And so John brought one of his former students who was a junior at Roosevelt. And she started speaking, no notes like this, just about what her life was like in high school versus what she felt it should be like. And she was bright, she was articulate, she had gone through hell, all right? And now she's a junior in college because somebody believed in her and somebody gave her a chance. And I walked up to her afterwards. The whole community who was in that meeting, by the time she was done, I swear to God, was in tears, including Father Hurley. And I just said, do you have an internship this summer? She said, no. I said, would you like to come to work at McDonald's? And she looked at me, McDonald's? She gave me that kind of look. I say, hey man, don't bite this gift horse here, okay? That type of thing. I didn't say you had to go in and work fries, all right? But you seem to have the kind of talent that we need. She took the internship. She worked in our diversity group, okay, all summer long with Pat Harris. She's been invited back. She's doing an international stint through her college, but she's the type of person we've zeroed in on. We said, we want to have someone like this in our company long term, all right? Good roots, good faith, okay? Came from a really tough background, okay? But dug herself up and just worked very, very hard. So there's lots of screens that are being deployed here. Mentors, your family, okay? And the companies you know that you read about a little bit, okay, that might hook up pretty closely with where your value system is and you think you can contribute and be successful there. And that's the way I'd go.
Let me follow up on that
Yeah.
with talking about the elephant that's in the room right here. In an age where the economy is declining, where it's really tough for people to get any kind of job, the only job they may be able to get is a job, one with swimming in a barrel of barracudas, okay? How does that enter into it when you got a Hobson's choice? Either go into the barrel of barracudas or you don't have a job. Okay, that's one. And then two, how do you recognize the barrel of barracudas when you're shopping for it? Because nobody's going to act like a barracuda when they're in an interview. Everybody's going to be a nice guy.
Yeah.
But how, when you're a new hire looking for a job with which you're going to dedicate your talents for your life, how do you determine, I think that's what this lady is asking here too, whether that is a place of human beings or whether it is a jungle of monsters?
I can tell you, Dave, the way we've done it in the past, we have what we call OJE, which is on-the-job experience. So if we go through an interview process, we see a young lady or a young man that we think might have potential coming in, we'll actually bring them into the environment for a short period of time. It might be, if you're going into the restaurant side of the business, it might be a 4-day weekend, if you will. Okay, where you can work a night shift, a day shift, and you know this, you've been in Jewel, how that kind of works. If you're coming into the corporate environment, it might be for a couple of weeks. It might be in one of those internships for a period of time. And they get a chance to look inside the company, and the company gets a chance to look at the prospective employee. And there's no commitment other than kind of an hourly a wage agreement that you have for whatever that period of time is. And then you get kind of a firsthand view, okay, of what's going on. And, it's hard for a company like McDonald's to, give you a picture of pie in the sky for 2 weeks. Okay, it's really hard for probably 4 days, all right, because it's an intense environment. The restaurant business is tough. I don't care if you go down to Greektown or you go down to the rock and roll McDonald's, okay? The restaurant environment is kind of tough. So when you get into that particular area, you could sort that out very, very quickly. The rest of it, I'd say, hey, listen, I'm not sure here. I hope you have 2 or 3 opportunities like that, and I would hope that you would go spend some quality time in them before you make a commitment or a company makes a commitment to you. I think that's a good way to go.
Great advice. Yes, sir. Wait for the microphone.
Well, I don't know if it's what this gentleman said a little, but not to be I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but
Sure.
I'm just curious. How do you? A lot of people, there's the fast food workers fight for $15 per hour. Fight for 15. So how do you perceive, why are some people struggling and they're trying to move up in the restaurant business, but they've been there for 10 years or more and they're barely getting the minimum wage, and other people just like you succeed and move up? What have you done right, or how do you analyze that?
I don't think it's what I've done right. I stayed for the duration. I didn't always, make what I was making when I left the company 6 months ago. And over the course of the year, over the years, I built my career, okay? And there were times when I felt like I probably should have had more, and I didn't, okay? And there were times when I thought, this is pretty good, okay? And then it got better, right? It happens, I think, in any business. It can happen working at Ford. It can happen working at the Apple store. It can happen anywhere, okay? And McDonald's was always known as a part-time employer, okay? Some of that changed, okay, over the course of the years, okay? And some of that is in balance today, and some of it isn't, okay? And I think there's change going on throughout our company and others, okay? And I don't think you can just point, to McDonald's on that. You can point to Walmart, you can point to a lot of other companies, and I think those changes are all going to be good. So, the position of the company today, I won't share that because I don't work for the company today. That's something that the management of the company would come out with, and when they're ready, they'll do it.
Are you in favor of the fight for 15? I'm just curious.
I have no comment on it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, right behind you.
Good morning, Mr. Stratton. My
morning.
name is Mark Buchong, senior here at UIC. Thank you
Mark.
for coming out and sharing your story and valuing your and incorporating your values into your leadership. I wanted to ask, how did you gain the trust of the individuals who maybe you were promoted instead of eventually, because you had said you'd face some setbacks early on by people being promoted instead of you.
Yeah.
So when you were finally promoted, how did you gain the trust of the individuals who were also passed up on that opportunity, and how did you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. When I started moving in the company early on, all of us were kind of the same age. There wasn't a real big difference. We had a lot of people coming back from Vietnam. Okay, we had a lot of I think grocery business did too, right, Dave? I mean, and so we had a lot of really good leaders that helped us and trained us in a very disciplined way. And the beauty of this system has always been the system. So if you become a leader in the system that believes in the system and supports the system and is wide open to new suggestions on making the system better on a regular basis, I found that's when you began to move. All right, there were many times when I look back on it now, I held myself back. All right, I held myself back because of my ego. I thought I should have had something. It wasn't coming fast enough. Okay, I got a little PO'd. All right, and there were people there, thank God, that would get right in my face and kind of say, hey, when this behavior gets corrected, you're probably going to move. But until then, it's not going to happen. And there's probably 4 or 5 times, as I said earlier, where I thought about leaving, because I thought I was, up for something that I didn't get, or I was owed something that I really wasn't owed, all right? It just wasn't the right time. There's a lot of different variables that come in to making those decisions. I can tell you, though, that when I did take certain level positions, officer positions and above, in the company, the listening really helped. The not walking into a new group of people pretending that you have all the answers, I think helps. I think when you ask the right questions of new teams of people, I think that's very important. And I spent 32 years working in the U.S. business. Then I left for 8 years and traveled the world for McDonald's. And then I came back to become the president of McDonald's US and Canada. There's no way that you can leave a big business like the US business for 8 years and walk back into a room of officers and pretend that you know what's going on in that business on the day-to-day. There's just no way, and I knew that. So I asked a lot of questions, and I put myself in a position where I want to lead this team and I want you guys to help me do this. Now, let's discuss the real issues, all right? And let's begin to put the strategies and initiatives in place to get the business moving in the right direction. And that's the approach I took, all right? And I think when you do that with people, people are pretty receptive to that. And they'll follow you. So.
Anybody else? Let me ask, go ahead. Do you have a question?
So I'm curious, do you find it ethical that there's companies like McDonald's and Walmart where they have their employees that are working full-time or that they're working part-time, like many jobs? And and they're not are getting paid a living wage, while there's like companies like Costco that do provide like a higher wage. Like, do you like what's your personal opinion on that? And like, yeah,
You know, the earning power, okay, that we have in the company, we had in the company, is different, obviously, at different positions. There are people that, you know, come out of college that, you know, have a little bit different structure depending on what they're trained to do and when they come into the company. People that are hired part-time, okay, you know, McDonald's has paid for years and years well over the minimum wage, okay? Never proclaimed itself to be a full-time employer. So, you know, things, as I said earlier, are changing with that. And, you know, the company's position, I'm not speaking for the company today. And I think that things are going to continue to get better. I trust the people that are in charge of the company that they'll do the right thing. So I can tell you.
Like that, just more about like the industry.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, McDonald's pays a higher than the a minimum wage, but that's the minimum. And I'm talking more about like a living wage, and more about like, do you think companies, like not just like not McDonald's, but like companies in general, should pay like a living wage, or like to where at least employees, you know, workers don't have to work like 3 or 2 part-time jobs, or like do you know like to get by, you know, also with no health care.
Yeah, it's
part-time.
You know, I think it's something McDonald's has always followed the law. All right, and let me. I am not going to speak for the company. I don't work. Okay.
You know, I think one of the things here that's got to be understood
Yeah.
is that without these kinds of jobs, people won't have any income at all. So that's got to enter into the equation too, especially when this is an opportunity for people to grow with it. Now, someone's not expected to be a French fry clerk forever, but without that job, he or she doesn't have the skills to go get other jobs. So I think that also has to be taken into consideration, especially when it was meant to be a part-time thing. And I think I certainly don't speak for McDonald's, except I've eaten a lot of fillets of fish and hamburgers there. I think that's part of the context that you have to take into consideration. But let me ask you a deeper philosophical question. It's a tricky tightrope. And this goes to your question, sir, if someone makes money and profit the sole God, okay? And then someone comes in like you who says, wait a minute, there's other values here that also have to be taken into consideration. Mm-hmm. Money is not God. God is God, okay? And that means I've got to do some things maybe sometimes that will not make as much money in the short term.
Sure.
How do you face, how does a good company, an ethical company, face that particular dilemma, which I think is the deeper issue of what he's talking to? How can a person be willing to say, we're going to do something that might not maximize our profit. We're going to stop the salmonella from getting out, right, even though it's going to lose us money. And how do you sell that to people that aren't so sure, that didn't have the background that you have to appreciate those kinds of distinctions?
That's a great question. And you know, if it's a serious food safety, like you mentioned, without question, that gets fixed now. Okay, it doesn't matter. The P&L, it's not important. Things like antibiotics in chicken, in a company that size, it has to be phased in over time, okay? Because the supply side of that is so big, all right, that it can take upwards of a year or 2 to get that done, okay? Because the supply reach is so big, it just takes time. And it will affect the P&L. So those decisions are made in direct, okay, conflict with the profit making of that restaurant, because that's not going to be cheap, okay, to make those decisions. So when you see those kind of things coming out, you say to yourself, in a company that size, let's try to do it as quickly as we can, but let's understand financially what that's going to do to the P&L too, because the operator has to have the profit on the bottom line to continue to have a viable business and support their people.
And sometimes it can be a tricky dilemma, to decide, where do you draw the line? And that's where judgment comes in, and I think that's where also character comes in.
Yeah.
And that's where you come in. If we're the people that go into the companies and ask these good questions, but again, not pie in the sky, something that's going to both allow the company to have a profitable business and at the same time make sure that people are treated fairly, that takes leaders. And that takes people who are skilled. And that's why we have seminars like this, so you can go out and be those kinds of people who both are successful at knowing the business, which obviously he was, and successful in giving a vision that goes beyond just purely getting myself ahead. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, hi, my name's Scott. Speaking specifically to your time at McDonald's, if you have the latitude to talk about it. McDonald's is obviously an enormous corporation. It has worldwide operations, and it operates not only corporate but franchise stores. What are some of the methods or some of the challenges that McDonald's or you faced to ensure that the ethical standards are maintained across such a diverse company?
Yeah. I can tell you the biggest one is the franchise system in and of itself. So if you look just at the U.S. and you looked at a company like Chipotle, and you look at a company like McDonald's, now there's a big difference in the sizes of those companies. All right, so we know that, but they're all owned by Chipotle. In McDonald's, okay, about 89% worldwide are owned by individual franchisees, or they're owned by operating partners, if you will, okay, developmental licensees. So to do that, the communication required and the buy-in and the direction and the focus has to start at the top of the company, but there's a lot of discussion, and to a certain extent, it takes time, all right, to get those kind of things done. And I used to tease with our franchisees, we have 3,200 presidents, all right, and everybody has an opinion, and theirs is always the right one. All right, so when you're trying to do something with a system that big, that can become fairly difficult. So you put teams of people together, cooperatives of people in leadership to begin to develop the strategies, the focus, and the initiatives that can help you move the business, and then you begin to kind of disseminate that focus and those strategies as deep into the business as you possibly can so that you can get buy-in and input back up to make sure that you're on the right track. So that is difficult. It takes some, it takes some mastery to kind of get that, the yin and the yang, if you will, on certain issues. Some are a little bit more clear than others, okay? A food safety issue would be very, very clear, okay? And we had one mid-year last year in China on chicken, okay? Wasn't even a line that McDonald's operated, but we got affiliated and associated, okay? And it hurts your business, so you got to be very, very careful and very quick to respond to certain things like that. But what we're going to do 5 years from now with customization on the menu, that's one there's going to be a lot of discussion on, right? And a lot of people are going to have input. So I think that's probably Scott, right? I think that's probably the largest thing that I think you kind of go up against. So.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I have one. The British poet Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem once called If, and one of the points of If is a father's giving advice to his son. He said, now if you can walk with kings and yet keep the common touch, you've really got something. And I think we see that in our guests today. I want to ask you how you developed that. You mentioned the point of your Catholic faith being important to your formation and your outlook. What exactly was it about the Catholic faith that, number one, held your allegiance, and number two, kept you motivated to try to live those ideals in your own life despite the competing pressures that were on you?
I know a lot of people might say, didn't have a lot growing up, okay? But I had a good mom and dad, okay? And I had a dad that always said to me, wasn't always around, you know, he was a negotiator for General Motors, okay? Wasn't always around, but always said, I always want to see you treating people the way you'd like to be treated. And I don't want you to ever forget that, okay? And I haven't always done that, okay? And, you know, nobody is perfect, right? But that never left me, okay? Now, he's been dead for a number of years, but it still never left me. I don't work for the company anymore, but I still believe that, okay? So whether I'm, you know, considering going on a board, or whether I'm working at Old St. Pat's, or whether I'm just kibitzing with old friends, okay? Treat people the way you'd like to be treated. And that's always been very, very important to me. And on the faith side of it, that's a tough question for me, okay? Because I've never left. I know a lot of people kind of fade away, and then, you know, maybe a little bit later in life they come back. I just never left. And I always tried to maintain a pretty close contact, at least every Sunday, okay, with you know, what I profess to believe in, and I do believe in it. I had a great awakening, if you will, when I started to go to Old St. Pat's. Okay, much different, because it felt like a place like I went to when I was in grade school, to me, all right? And much different than what I was experiencing on a week-to-week basis. And I've stuck with that, and I'm running with it because I think it's great. And so I don't have a magic answer for that, other than what my dad ingrained in my head.
To repeat what was said at the Oscar performance by J.K. Simmons, if you got a mom and dad who are alive, like the message I get is call them up.
Yeah.
And be the kind of mom and dad that you think that ought to be there. We have to go out and do this kind of thing ourselves. It's easy to tell somebody else to do it, but when it comes to us, that's where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. Mr. Stratton, thank you very much.
Thanks,
You'll be
everyone.
back again, and let's
Okay.
give him a round of applause.